I'm using Quilter Select Ultralight Stabilizer today. It is a great stabilizer if you haven't tried it. It's heat tolerant, which means you can iron on it, and it is durable enough to withstand all of the seams that we're going to be stitching on it, and yet it is light enough that it tears away easily. I've threaded my machine with the dark contrasting thread that I'll be using for the first two color breaks in the design. These two color breaks are the cutting guides and the stitching guides. Using a dark contrasting thread makes it easier to see the lines when you're cutting. I'm going to start the machine. We're going to stitch out color break 1. The X that you can see running through the design is the cutting line, and that is what we stitched in color break 1. Next I'll stitch out color break 2, which provides a road map of where all of the stitching lines in the design are going to fall. The fact that we've used a strong contrasting thread for color breaks 1 and 2 is not going to impact our finished fish at all, because I'm only stitching onto the stabilizer. I've rethreaded my machine with a color that much more closely matches the fabric that I'm working with, and I'm ready to place my round 1 fabric. And what I'm going to be doing is centering it over this center square. Once I position the fabric, I'm going to lift the bottom and check to make sure that I have at least 1/4 of an inch on each of the sides, and then I'll lift one of the sides to make sure I have at least 1/4 of an inch on the top and the bottom. That looks great, so I'm ready to stitch out color break 3. And in this color break, what we'll be doing is adding the placement guides for the round 2 fabric strips, which will be the tails of each of the fish. When placing fabric strip 1, I want to point out that the right side is facing up. The placement guide that we just stitched is exactly 1/4 of an inch away from where the seam lines are going to fall. I trimmed my round 1 fabric as close to the stitch placement guide as I could, and now I'm ready to position the first fabric strip of round 2. All I need to do is center fabric strip 2 right along the stitched guide, and I'm ready to stitch it in place. Now that I'm done, I'm going to flip the piece to expose the right side, and all I need to do with that piece for now is keep it out of the way of the next stitching line. So I'm going to position the next piece of fabric right along the stitched guide, and I'm ready to stitch out the seam line joining the second strip of round 2. Again, I'm going to flip the piece out of the way, finger press it back, and position the third strip. Just like the first two, right side down, and center it right along the stitched guide. Again, we'll flip it out, finger press, and position the fourth fabric strip for round 2 and stitch the seam. I pressed all of my round 2 pieces, and when I finished, I cut 4 small pieces of transparent tape. And what I'm going to do is place one of the pieces of tape over the intersecting corners. I'm doing this because some of the embroidery feet tend to catch and lift the fabric as it's going by, and this little piece of tape is going to prevent that from happening. So here we go with the next color break that will be the placement guide for our round 3 pieces. Notice how I always use my hand to keep the fabric smooth in front of the needle. I trimmed my excess fabric and I removed the tape, and I am ready to start placing the pieces for round 3. We do this exactly the same way as we place the pieces in round 2. We're just going to center the fabric strip right along the stitched guide and start to sew. Now if you notice, what's going on now is that we are starting and stopping a seam right in the center. The break in the seam line gives us a tie-in and a tie-out so that when we cut our master block into its 4 components, each of the seam lines are anchored. So now, just as we did on round 2, we're going to flip the fabric back to reveal the right side and just give it a little finger press, and then we'll position the next fabric strip. Now that round 3 is done, we're going to remove the hoop from the machine, and I'm going to press these seams before adding the final fabric piece. I press my seams and I return my hoop to the machine. And as you can see, we have round 1, round 2, and round 3. In all master blocks except the cross-cut squares, if it was a 3-round block, you would be finished right now. But in order to make it square, we have one more fabric strip that we're going to add. Our master block is now finished, which means 4 of your 13 fish will be complete as soon as we trim the master block. You'll need to make one more master block that's identical to the one that we just made. You'll need to make a 3rd master block that substitutes another color for the white. We're using gray in our example. And we'll make our 4th master block, which is going to split between red and blue.